You people should try a motel in the South Side, or better yet, sleep in your car. This hotel isn't for your kind." That's what Sarah Mitchell, standing behind the polished granite check-in desk at the Horizon Grand Hotel in downtown Atlanta, said with a smirk as she leaned across the counter. She wasn't whispering. She wanted others to hear, and they did. Right behind Maya Reynolds stood her 10-year-old son, Caleb, eyes wide, holding her hand, trying to understand why this woman, dressed in a crisp blazer with a name tag and corporate smile, was suddenly so full of venom. What happened next unraveled fast, too fast. But before we take you through the 9 minutes that turned a routine hotel visit into a viral reckoning, let me ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below, because what you're about to hear, you might have seen in your own life. And if you believe in accountability, fairness, and standing up when it counts, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these true stories that expose what too many try to hide. This one's going to stay with you. It started when Maya Reynolds, a 45-year-old black businesswoman, blazer, jeans, no makeup, calm and composed, walked into the Horizon Grand just after 7:11 p.m., her son Caleb beside her in shorts and a Spider-Man t-shirt, chattering excitedly about the pool. She'd called earlier to book one of the hotel's premium VIP suites as a treat for Caleb's birthday weekend. Atlanta was her hometown. The Horizon Grand, one of the flagship properties of Horizon Hospitality, a company where Maya just so happened to own 25% of the entire operation, making her the third largest shareholder. But in that lobby, no one asked who she was. They looked at her skin, her clothes, her son, and decided, "You can't afford that suite," Sarah said flatly, looking Maya up and down without a trace of shame. Maya raised an eyebrow, pulling up her phone with the booking confirmation. "I already reserved it." Sarah didn't bother glancing at the screen. "Then the system's wrong. Try someplace else." From the side, another woman, Emily Carter, a second front desk clerk, added under her breath, but loud enough to sting. "Try a slum motel. This isn't for you." Caleb's hand tightened around Maya's. He looked up at her, confused, his voice small. "Mom, why are they being mean?" Before Maya could even answer, a guest stepped forward from the side. Arthur Prescott, white, silver-haired, with the entitlement of someone who thought he owned the air in the room. "Get them out," he said, as he slipped a folded bill across the counter to Sarah. $200 in cash. "They don't belong here." Sarah didn't hesitate. She took the money, tucked it quickly into a drawer, then turned back to Maya with a newfound authority in her voice. "I'm asking you to leave. Ma'am. Now." Maya blinked, stunned, but calm. "I'm here to book a suite. I'm not going anywhere." David Holt, the hotel manager, stepped out from the hallway and folded his arms. "We're responding to a guest complaint," he said coolly. "You're causing disruption." Maya opened her mouth, but before she could speak, another voice cut through the lobby. "Wait a minute, this is wrong." It came from Michael Chen, a guest in a crisp white button-up, holding his phone up. "They're just trying to check in. I saw the whole thing." He tapped his screen. "And now I'm filming it." Moments later, the clip would hit X and TikTok with the title, "Black CEO and Son Kicked Out of Their Own Hotel." It had 1,000 views before Maya even left the lobby. Sarah's tone sharpened. "You need to leave the premises immediately, or we'll have security escort you." Emily scoffed, not even looking at them anymore. "This is a waste of everyone's time." Arthur leaned against the counter, smug. "They don't fit here." That's when Security Officer James Tucker, tall, stone-faced, walked toward them with slow, deliberate steps. Caleb instinctively stepped behind Maya, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. Maya said gently, putting her arm around him. They are. A few feet away. Michael Chen's phone screen showed the caption, Horizon Grand's racism caught on video. In the background, a hotel intern named Priya Sharma looked visibly shaken. She whispered something to the woman beside her. Lauren Pierce, Maya's assistant, who had just arrived and was already dialing the branch director, Robert Evans. Hold on, Lauren said firmly. He's on his way. Maya turned back to the counter. I'm booking the VIP suite under my name, with a valid reservation. Sarah rolled her eyes. Not anymore. It's been flagged. Invalid payment method. That was a lie. Arthur's money had shifted priorities. Michael stepped forward. I heard her mutter. They don't look rich. I caught it on camera. Emily shot a glare at him, but didn't deny it. Caleb looked up again, this time braver. Mom, they're wrong, right? Maya nodded slowly, her eyes steady on the staff. That's right, baby. We're not in trouble. They just don't know who they're dealing with yet. Around them, murmurs spread. Guests watched. A few quietly pulled out their phones. One woman, Laura Bennett, white, in her 40s, said aloud, I've stayed here for years, and I've never seen anything like this. Priya stepped a little closer, voice trembling. This isn't right. But the staff didn't back down. Instead, Sarah began typing furiously at her keyboard, canceling Maya's reservation, right in front of everyone. Michael's jaw dropped. She just deleted it. I'm watching it happen. James, the security officer, took another step forward. David Holt, the manager, barked. Escort them out. The room felt colder now. Caleb didn't cry. He just held his mother's hand tighter, looking around at people who either watched silently or turned away. I'm scared, he whispered. Maya didn't flinch. Then stand right here with me, because we're not moving. Michael's voice rang out again, louder this time. This whole hotel is about to find out who she is. The air in the Horizon Grand lobby was thick with tension, the kind you could feel pressing on your chest. But Maya Reynolds stood her ground, chin high, voice steady, one hand holding her son's, the other calmly tapping her phone. You're refusing me service based on how I look, she said, her words measured, calm like a storm held back. Sarah Mitchell folded her arms. We've asked you to leave. You're making other guests uncomfortable. Maya raised her voice just enough to be heard, but not enough to lose control. No, I'm making you uncomfortable, and you don't get to hide that behind policy. Beside her, 10-year-old Caleb tugged at her blazer, whispering, Mom, can we just go? Maya knelt beside him, brushing a hand across his curls. Not today, baby. We don't run from wrong. We stand in front of it. Around them, other guests had started to notice. A few took out phones. Others whispered. But one man didn't whisper. Michael Chen, still filming. His voice loud and clear. This is going viral. Y'all need to stop this. On his screen. The caption read, VIP guest denied for not looking rich enough. Horizon Grand exposed. Next to him, Laura Bennett stepped forward, arms crossed. They're just trying to check in. Let them stay, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Inside the front desk, Priya Sharma, the intern who'd been silent so far, turned to Lauren Pierce and whispered, This isn't right. I saw Sarah take money from that man. Lauren, Maya's assistant, nodded firmly. Robert's on his way. Just then, David Holt reappeared from the corridor, trying to assert control. This is creating a scene, he snapped. James, escort them out. The security officer took a step forward, but paused. That hesitation was enough. Maya turned toward him. You really want to put your hands on the third largest shareholder of this company? She asked, voice low and razor sharp. James blinked. He hadn't expected that. Emily Carter scoffed. You're bluffing. A woman like you doesn't own anything here." Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to. She just stared her down. Then, calmly, she spoke, not to Emily, but to the room. "You've gone from unethical to unlawful in less than 10 minutes. And though her tone never wavered, there was weight in her words. Because this wasn't the first time Maya had been told she didn't belong. At 30, she had walked into a Silicon Valley investor meeting with nothing but her ambition and a solid hospitality tech idea. Before she'd even finished her pitch, one of the older white investors leaned over and said, "You look more like someone who should be serving coffee, not asking for 6 figures." She'd walked out of that room humiliated, but not defeated. Instead, she built her own empire, hotel by hotel, investment by investment. She knew how to turn disrespect into dividends. By 45, she owned a quarter stake in Horizon Hospitality. She didn't need validation from a desk clerk. She was the board, and they were about to find out. Michael's video crossed 2,000 views. "You see this?" he said to no one in particular. "This is why people stop trusting brands, because bias hides behind a uniform." Priya, trembling, finally spoke up louder. "Sarah changed the reservation. It was valid when she came in. I saw it on the screen." Sarah turned sharply. "That's a lie." But her voice cracked. Emily tried to deflect. "This is company policy," she said, but even she didn't sound convinced anymore. "The VIP suite's expensive. We make sure guests match expectations," Laura Bennett snapped. "Expectations based on what? Skin tone?" Maya placed a hand on Caleb's back. He was quiet now, watching everything. "They're wrong, right?" he asked. "Yes," Maya said, "but they'll learn." Across the lobby, Arthur Prescott, the man who had slipped Sarah a $200 bill, was still lingering, arms folded like he owned the place. Maya turned toward him. "Your money didn't buy our silence," she said flatly. "You bribed a hotel employee to remove a paying guest. That's criminal." Arthur chuckled, smug. "Lady, you're reaching." "No," Michael interrupted. "You're slipping, and it's all on camera." At that, a small gasp spread through the lobby. Guests were now fully tuned in, some filming, some simply watching the fallout unfold. James, the security guard, looked increasingly unsure. Priya stepped closer to Maya, then turned to Sarah. "You told me to flag people based on what they wore. You said high-paying guests look a certain way. You trained me to do this." Sarah looked around, suddenly exposed. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped. Maya turned toward the desk. "Pull up my reservation." Sarah hesitated. "It's gone." "Because you deleted it," Michael said, holding up his phone. "I recorded the screen when she did it." Lauren glanced at her phone. "Robert's 2 minutes out," she whispered. "I've got board members on standby." Caleb's voice broke through again, this time louder, stronger. "You shouldn't treat people like that," he said, looking straight at Emily. "You were really mean." A quiet hush settled over the room. Even Sarah didn't respond. Emily scoffed and muttered something under her breath, but Laura stepped forward. "That child just taught you more about decency than your whole training manual." Maya nodded. "We're not moving, and we're not leaving. Let Robert explain who I am, since clearly none of you thought to ask." Sarah looked panicked now. "We didn't know," she mumbled. Maya looked her straight in the eyes. "That's the difference between ignorance and prejudice. One is accidental, the other's a choice." Michael's phone buzzed again. 300,000 views. He looked up and said, "This whole lobby just became America's hotel lobby. Let's see if the company has the courage to clean its own house." Sarah's hands hovered over the keyboard like she was searching for an escape. She wasn't typing anything anymore, just clicking between screens, trying to look busy, trying to look right. But the damage was done. Behind her. Maya's reservation had been switched to canceled. It was still visible on the screen if anyone knew what they were looking for. And Michael Chen? He knew. He leaned in, filming from behind the stanchion, whispering into his phone for the viewers now flooding his feed. "She changed it," he said. "I've got it. Sarah Mitchell just altered this woman's reservation. Look." His TikTok X post was climbing by the second. Captioned, "Horizon Grand, caught deleting VIP booking, Black mother and son forced out." Maya didn't flinch. She was tired of flinching. From the corner, David Holt returned again like a man trying to regain control of a room he'd never had a grip on. "Escort them out," he told James, his voice short, tight, rehearsed. "Now." James hesitated, his posture stiff, as if his uniform suddenly felt too tight. The crowd in the lobby, what was once just a handful of onlookers, had turned into an audience. Phones were up. Murmurs spread like a low tide. Arthur Prescott stood to the side, smug as ever, but even he had stopped speaking. Emily Carter stepped into Maya's path as James approached, arms crossed, lips curled in amusement. "If you want a scene, you're about to get one," she said, but Maya didn't move. She looked her dead in the eye. "The only scene here is the one your prejudice created." Just then, Caleb stepped closer to his mother, squeezed her hand, and whispered, "I'm scared, but I'm with you." Maya looked down at him, then back up at the staff. "You hear that? My son, 10 years old, is braver than this entire front desk." Michael raised his voice, directing it at the camera and the growing number of viewers. "They're being thrown out because they don't look like what these people expect money to look like. This is racism. Live and uncut." His video crossed 1 million views in under 10 minutes. Laura Bennett, who had moved closer, spoke with firm conviction. "This isn't just about a booking anymore. This is about dignity." Priya Sharma, still trembling slightly, stepped around the counter. "I saw Sarah take the bribe," she said, louder this time. "She changed the reservation after Arthur handed her the money." Sarah spun around, eyes wide. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I saw it," Priya insisted. "You said they didn't look like they belonged." Maya nodded slowly, her voice calm but cutting. "Every word you've spoken confirms it. You didn't ask if we had a reservation. You assumed we didn't deserve one." Sarah's voice cracked. "We were just following direction." "From who?" Maya cut in. "David? Emily? Arthur? Who told you that taking $200 to erase a child's birthday weekend was okay?" Caleb looked up again, his voice just a little stronger than before. "You said we didn't belong," he said to Sarah and Emily. "But this is our hotel. Mom helped build it." That line stopped people in their tracks. Even James blinked. Maya didn't correct him. He was right. She had invested, fought, and endured to earn her stake, 25% of Horizon Hospitality. And now here she was, being removed from her own lobby like a trespasser. James took a step back, arms dropping to his sides. "Ma'am, But he didn't finish the sentence. Michael stepped between Maya and James, holding his phone high. "Let's be clear," he said to the room. "We've got witness statements. We've got a video of a reservation being tampered with. We've got a child being humiliated, and a staff covering for each other." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The truth was loud enough. Priya turned toward the other guests. "They told us during training to prioritize preferred guests. That meant ones who looked like money. You know what that means?" She didn't have to say it. Everyone already knew. David Holt took a sharp breath, looked at Lauren and snapped. "She shouldn't even be speaking. She's an intern." Lauren shot him a hard look. "And you shouldn't still be employed." That got applause from somewhere in the back of the lobby. Maya looked down at Caleb. "We're almost there," she whispered. "One more minute. Just stay with me." "I'm not leaving." he said softly. Not till it's fair. Maya smiled, proud. The kind of pride that came not from money or power, but from planting a seed and watching it stand its ground. David motioned again toward security, but James had stepped back entirely now. I'm not putting hands on anyone, he said. Not like this. Emily turned toward Michael, lunging toward his phone. Stop recording! Touch me, he warned, and I'll sue you myself. Laura placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. Step away, she said sharply. You've done enough. Michael's camera caught everything. The defiance, the desperation, the slow unraveling of a staff who thought they could do whatever they wanted behind the safety of a name tag. You're finished, Sarah, Maya said simply. Every camera in this room will make sure of that. Sarah stared. Silent now, Emily muttered. You're all blowing this out of proportion, Arthur added. This is why people don't like dealing with folks like you. Everything becomes a problem. Maya turned to him, her voice quieter than before. You tried to humiliate a child and bought a clerk to do your dirty work. The only problem here is you... Michael nodded, narrating to his viewers. She's not backing down. Her son's not backing down. This is what dignity looks like under pressure. Priya stepped closer to Maya. You're the kind of leader we were never trained for. No, Maya replied. But I'm the one your next manager will be trained by. Just then, Lauren's phone buzzed. She held it up. Robert just pulled in out front, and he's bringing backup. Caleb looked toward the doors. Is it over, Mom? Maya knelt beside him. It's just beginning, sweetheart, and we're right where we need to be. The moment James Tucker stepped back from Maya and Caleb, the entire energy in the Horizon Grand lobby shifted. He had been the one person physically capable of removing them. And now, even he wasn't willing to touch the situation. Sarah Mitchell stood frozen behind the front desk, her face pale, her eyes darting to the growing crowd. Emily Carter, however, wasn't done. She lunged forward, not at Maya this time, but at Michael Chen. Stop filming, she snapped, her hand reaching for his phone. You're not allowed to record inside hotel property. Michael jerked his arm away and took 2 deliberate steps back, keeping the phone steady. You don't get to silence the truth because it's uncomfortable. This is already on 4 platforms. You can't scrub it now. The words rang out loud and clear. By now. Dozens of guests had crowded near the front desk. Some stood silently. Others were whispering, filming, or just watching it unfold in disbelief. Arthur Prescott, still leaning smugly by a support column, shook his head and muttered, Y'all just love to play the victim. But no one was listening to him anymore, not even the staff, because for the first time, the weight of public opinion was tilting away from them. David Holt pushed through the crowd once more, visibly rattled. This ends now, he barked. I want everyone cleared out. Staff back to your posts. Guests, disperse. His voice tried to sound firm, but his eyes betrayed panic. Then Maya turned, facing him slowly, her voice calm but unshakable. The only thing ending today is your position at this hotel. David opened his mouth to speak, but stopped when he noticed Priya Sharma, the young intern, step forward once again. Her voice trembled slightly, but it held more steel now. I was told in training to prioritize guests who look like they belong. We were never told that outright, but it was in everything. Who we smiled at, who we offered upgrades to, who we double-checked credit cards for. She paused, then added, They told us to trust our instincts, but our instincts were being trained to look past people who looked like Maya. That sentence dropped into the room like a stone in still water. People gasped. One guest near the rear, an older black gentleman in a gray overcoat, shook his head and said, Same old game. Maya didn't blink. She had heard this before, felt it before, But hearing it spoken aloud, in public, by someone inside the system, that was rare. That was change. So the bias wasn't just tolerated, it was institutional, she said, eyes locked on David. You built a culture of exclusion. David looked around wildly, but no one came to his defense. Sarah was visibly sweating. Emily stepped back behind the desk. James folded his arms and leaned quietly against the wall. He wasn't helping David anymore. It's policy, Sarah blurted. We were following procedure. No, Maya said sharply. You were following prejudice. Don't hide behind a manual you chose to misread. Caleb, still clutching his mother's hand, looked up and said, Why would someone train you to be unfair? It was a simple question, honest and soft-spoken, but it hit the room like a punch. Priya stepped toward him, crouched down slightly, and said, They told me to trust what I see, but they never taught me to question what I don't. Maya looked at her and nodded, appreciative but firm. And now you're learning. So let's keep learning. Michael's video was now at 5 million views. His followers were flooding the comments with messages of support, demands for justice, and tags to civil rights groups and reporters. He glanced at Maya. People are watching, and they're not just mad. They're ready to act. Maya took a breath and turned back to Sarah, who was still clutching the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Do you understand, Maya said carefully, that your words to my son, your tone, your insults, are now public record? You can't erase them. You can't walk them back. All you can do now is admit what you did. Sarah's voice cracked. We thought she didn't belong in a VIP suite. Because of what? Maya pressed. Because of the way I dress? Because I'm not holding a designer handbag? Because my son is wearing sneakers instead of loafers? Because you don't look like the kind of person who books a suite? Sarah muttered. The room fell silent again. Even Arthur's smirk faded slightly. Michael turned the phone back to his face. You heard it. Straight from the desk manager's mouth. Their training is visual profiling. Welcome to hospitality in America. Caleb stepped forward, closer to the desk, his voice louder than before. She's more than the kind of person who books a suite. She's the kind of person who owns this hotel. Whispers broke out again. Sarah's face flushed deep red. That's not possible. Maya spoke softly, but with power. Check the shareholder list. Lauren Pierce, standing near the main entrance, had her phone open. Robert's almost here, she said. And just so everyone knows, 3 members of the board are already reviewing this footage, David muttered. This is unfair. You want to talk about unfair? Maya snapped. Unfair is a 10-year-old boy being told to go to a slum motel while holding a paid reservation. Unfair is being erased from your own company's lobby. Emily tried once more to protest. She's twisting this into something bigger. Laura Bennett, who had stood silent for several minutes, turned to her. No, she's not. You did that when you decided she didn't belong before she even opened her mouth. More murmurs of agreement followed. One woman muttered, I'm canceling my stay. Another nodded. Same. Maya turned to Caleb, crouched down, and gently fixed the collar on his shirt. You said you wanted to know why they were mean. It's because they were trained to be, but we're going to retrain them. How? He asked. With truth, she said, and action. Michael's video ticked upward, 6.2 million views. He glanced at Maya. They're ready for the next move. She stood and looked toward the glass doors. Then let them watch what leadership looks like. The double glass doors at the front of the Horizon Grand finally slid open with a quiet swoosh. But the effect in the lobby was anything but quiet. Heads turned, phones lifted, conversations stopped, and in walked Robert Evans, tall, composed, dressed in a navy blue suit that said, I solve problems before they hit the news. He paused as he scanned the lobby. Guests crowded together, staff scattered like guilty schoolchildren, and Maya Reynolds standing still as a statue, one hand resting on her son's shoulder. Lauren stepped forward to greet him, but he was already moving. "Where is she?" he asked. Then he saw Maya. "Maya," he said, voice firm but warm. "You all right?" Maya gave a single nod. "My son and I came here to check in for a weekend stay. Instead, we were insulted, profiled, bribed against, and nearly dragged out by security. I think you know what needs to happen now." The silence in the room was thick. Robert turned to Sarah, Emily, David, and James, one by one. "You all recognize Ms. Reynolds, don't you?" They didn't answer. Sarah blinked. Emily looked down. David shifted his stance like someone trying to disappear into the floor. Robert let the pause linger. "She's not just a guest. She's the third largest shareholder in Horizon Hospitality, 25% ownership stake. And if she wanted to, she could have all your jobs by midnight." Caleb glanced up at Maya, his eyes wide. "You own part of the hotel?" he whispered. Maya smiled gently. "I help lead the company, baby, and now I'm going to help fix it." Robert stepped forward and faced the crowd. "Ms. Reynolds, what would you like done?" Without hesitation, Maya responded, loud and clear. "Immediate termination of Sarah Mitchell, Emily Carter, David Holt, and James Tucker. Each one played a direct role in humiliating my son, violating policy, and compromising guest safety." Sarah looked stunned. "Please, Ms. Reynolds, we didn't know who you were." "And you thought that excused the way you treated us?" Maya replied, her voice steady. "I'm not asking for an apology. I'm demanding accountability." Emily stepped forward, desperate now. "We were just doing what we were trained to do. Prioritize premium guests. Keep the image consistent." "And that image didn't include a black woman and her son in casual clothes," Maya said flatly. "You judged us before I even said my name." David started to speak, but Robert cut him off. "Don't," he said. "Just stop." Caleb tugged at Maya's hand again. "You were right, Mom," he said softly. "They were wrong." Robert turned to Lauren. "Can you get Susan Caldwell, Richard Ellison, and Karen Liu on the phone?" Lauren nodded, already dialing. "They're expecting your call." Sarah stumbled over her words. We thought we were protecting the brand." Maya looked her straight in the eye. "You were destroying it. And now, the whole country knows it." Michael's phone vibrated again. 20 million views and rising. His most recent post read, "Black CEO exposes Horizon Grand. 4 staff face firing after viral bias scandal." Laura Bennett stepped forward. "This woman stood in this lobby with grace, while your team insulted her, erased her reservation, and nearly threw her out. I've never seen someone stand so calm in a storm." Maya turned toward Robert. "I'm also requesting that Horizon's board formally implement a new anti-bias training protocol across all locations, and I want internal reviews of guest treatment reports for the last 5 years." Robert nodded. "Consider it done." Then, for the first time that evening, Maya addressed the room. Not the staff, not Robert, but the guests. This wasn't just about one bad clerk or one bribe. It's about a system that quietly teaches people to see some of us as less than, without saying it out loud. But my son heard it. You all heard it. And now, it's time we change it. Caleb's chest swelled a little. His voice, though still small, was stronger. "I want to help too. Mom." "You already are," Maya said. Sarah's lip trembled. "Arthur gave me $200 to get rid of them," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I didn't think it would go this far." Arthur, now visibly sweating, stepped backward. "She's lying," he snapped, but Priya stepped forward again. "I saw him hand her the cash." Michael caught the whole exchange, zooming in. "It's all here," he said quietly. "Every moment." Emily tried to grab his phone again, but Laura blocked her path. "Stop touching him," she said. "You're done." Sarah turned back toward Maya. "I didn't mean it to go this far. I didn't mean for him to hear those things," she said, gesturing toward Caleb, but Maya didn't soften. "You don't get to be sorry after the damage is done. You humiliated my child. You told him to go to a slum motel. You looked at us and saw less. That apology belongs to every guest you ever treated that way. Not just me." Caleb nodded, his eyes on Sarah. "You shouldn't have done that," he said plainly. "You hurt my mom." Robert signaled to hotel security. Real security, not James, and quietly said, "Escort the 4 of them out. I'll process terminations with HR." James didn't argue. He didn't say a word. He just followed the others out, their footsteps echoing against the marble tile. Lauren approached Maya and whispered, "The media wants a statement. Are you ready?" "Yes," Maya said. "But I want them to hear it from the guests, too." She turned back to Laura, to Michael, to Priya, to every person who had stepped forward. "This was never about revenge. It's about building something better than what we walked into." Robert nodded solemnly. "This is leadership, and I won't stand in your way." As the lobby began to breathe again, Caleb wrapped his arms around his mother's waist. "You're so powerful," he said into her jacket. "No," she said softly, kissing his forehead. "I'm just your mom. That's where the power comes from." The next morning, the 11th floor conference room of the Horizon Grand buzzed with the kind of quiet tension that only follows a public scandal. Floor-to-ceiling windows cast soft daylight over the polished oak table, where 3 board members, Susan Caldwell, Richard Ellison, and Karen Liu, sat with their laptops open and phones muted. On the far end sat Maya Reynolds, calm, composed, and prepared. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for reform. Caleb sat beside her in a miniature navy blazer Lauren had picked up that morning, his hands folded, his expression serious. Across the table, Robert Evans recapped the events in measured detail: the deleted reservation, the bribe, the biased training, and the viral footage. "There's no ambiguity here," he concluded. "The actions taken by Sarah Mitchell, Emily Carter, David Holt, and James Tucker were not only unethical, but deeply damaging to our brand." Susan leaned forward. "All 4 are officially terminated, effective immediately," she said. "We've already notified HR," Karen added. "We'll be reviewing every complaint logged in the last 5 years to identify patterns of discrimination." Maya nodded. "That's a start, but it's not enough." She stood and walked slowly toward the windows, her voice even but filled with conviction. "We need mandatory bias training across all locations: front desk, security, management, everyone. No vague policies, no gut instincts, clear standards, documented accountability." Richard Ellison tapped his pen. "You're absolutely right, Maya. We were overdue for this. It shouldn't have taken a viral video to get here." "But it did," Maya replied, turning back toward the group. "And that video is still climbing. As of this morning, it's been viewed over 35 million times. That's not just exposure. It's a mirror. The public sees us now, and we have one shot to prove we're serious about change." Lauren handed out packets with preliminary plans, new training guidelines, internal audit proposals, and a short list of diverse hiring candidates to replace the staff who had been terminated. "We've already made 2 provisional hires," she added. "Lisa Torres, formerly with the 4 Seasons in Miami, will take over as senior clerk, and Anna Brooks, known for her crisis leadership, will step in as acting general manager." Karen nodded. "Good choices. They'll help stabilize things." Susan glanced toward Maya. We'd also like you to oversee the rollout of this reform initiative, company-wide, not just at this property." Maya hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I accept, but I want it named plainly. Horizon Equity Initiative. This isn't optics. It's repair," Caleb whispered. "Mom, you're really changing everything." "We're changing it," she whispered back. "You helped start this." Michael Chen's video was playing silently on a screen behind them, captions scrolling beneath his narration. Maya's quote, "You judged us before I even said my name," was now one of the top trending audio clips on social media. Robert turned toward the group. "Guests from yesterday have been offered written apologies and complimentary room upgrades. We're coordinating a press statement to be released by 5 p.m. We'll also make sure the intern, Priya Sharma, is supported," Maya added. She risked her future to speak the truth. That should be rewarded, not punished. Everyone nodded in agreement. Caleb reached for a glass of water and said, "She was brave like you, Mom. She was brave like us," Maya corrected gently. But just as the room began to settle, Lauren stepped back into the conference room holding a folder, her expression unreadable. "I just came from David Holt's old office," she said. "This was left in his drawer." She handed the folder to Robert, who flipped it open and read silently. His eyebrows lifted. Then he passed it to Susan, who read aloud. "To maintain visual brand alignment, prioritize assistance and upgrades to guests with high-income indicators. If uncertain, use discretion to protect Horizon's image." She looked up slowly. This was an internal memo, dated 3 months ago. Karen sat back, stunned. "He formalized discrimination." Richard's voice was tight. "This memo was never brought to the board. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen." Maya took the paper and stared at it for a long moment. "This isn't a mistake. This is a system working exactly as designed." She handed the memo to Lauren. "Have legal start a full review. We need to know how far this goes, and we need to make this public. Quiet fixes aren't enough anymore." Caleb tugged on her sleeve. "That's not fair," he said. "A paper told them to be mean?" Maya nodded. "And now we're going to write a new one." Susan folded her hands together. "This memo changes everything. It shows intent, not just behavior." Karen stood and crossed her arms. "We have to disclose this. If we try to bury it, we're complicit." Maya's voice was steady. "Then we don't bury it. We shine a light on it. The world already saw what happened in that lobby. Now they deserve to see what happens behind closed doors." Michael Chen posted a still photo of the memo later that afternoon, adding the caption, "This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was policy. Horizon has a reckoning ahead." Within minutes, his post exploded. Robert turned back to Maya. "This company is going to be different because of you. Because of us," she said. "This isn't about one person. It's about everyone who's ever been made to feel small at the front desk." Caleb reached across the table for her hand. "We're making it fair, right?" "That's the plan," Maya said. "And we're not stopping here." 3 months later, on a crisp September morning, the boardroom at Horizon Hospitality's Atlanta headquarters felt entirely different from the one Maya had walked into that summer. Gone was the tension. In its place was something far more lasting: structure, accountability, and a quiet sense of momentum. Maya Reynolds sat at the head of the table, not just as a shareholder, but now officially appointed as Horizon's Executive Director of Equity and Guest Experience, a title she'd never asked for, but one the board insisted she hold after the reforms she led swept through the company like a long overdue tide. Caleb sat beside her again, older in spirit if not in age, flipping through his school notebook where he had started jotting ideas for what he called a fairness rule book for hotels. Behind them, a new sign hung on the wall: Horizon Equity Initiative. Every guest, every time. The company had rolled out comprehensive bias training across all properties. Guest complaints were now handled by a third-party audit team. Hiring practices had been rewritten from the ground up, and internal compliance reports were public. Maya had seen change before, but never at this scale, never with this much backing. And it hadn't come from lawsuits or threats. It had come from standing still in truth and letting decency speak louder than outrage. Michael Chen's video had topped 50 million views by then, reshared by media outlets, civil rights groups, and everyday viewers who said they saw themselves in Caleb's eyes and Maya's calm. "Hospitality transformed," the caption read, and for once, it wasn't an exaggeration. Guests who had been present that night sent in thank you letters. Employees from other branches wrote emails saying they finally felt seen. One manager from Chicago said, "We didn't know how broken it was until she fixed it." But not everyone had moved on. That afternoon, as Maya and Caleb stepped into the Horizon Grand lobby to meet with a new team of hires, a familiar voice cut through the air. "You ruined everything." It was Sarah Mitchell. No uniform now, no desk to stand behind, just a plain gray sweater and bitterness spilling out like old perfume. She approached without hesitation, but security was already watching. "You think you fixed it? You destroyed my career." Maya didn't flinch. "No," she replied evenly. "You destroyed it when you chose discrimination over decency. All I did was hold up the mirror." Caleb stood a little closer to his mother, but this time, there was no fear in his eyes, just understanding. Security stepped forward, asking Sarah to leave. As she was escorted out, she shouted over her shoulder, "I hope it was worth it." Maya didn't respond, not with words. She turned back toward the reception desk, where a young Latina clerk named Lisa smiled and greeted a guest in a wheelchair without hesitation, offering him complimentary assistance with his bags and room selection. Maya nodded to herself. Yes, it was worth it. In the weeks that followed, Horizon's reform model was shared across the industry. A hospitality trade group invited Maya to speak at a national conference, and most moving of all, Caleb was asked to speak at a youth leadership summit hosted at his school. He stood in front of his classmates, holding a photo of the Horizon Grand's front desk, and said, "That's where I learned fairness isn't always free. But my mom taught me you still stand for it, even if your voice shakes." Maya, sitting in the back, blinked hard to keep from tearing up. Back at Horizon headquarters, Karen Liu led oversight on new complaint reviews. Susan Caldwell oversaw an ethics hotline where even entry-level employees could report concerns without fear. Michael Chen kept telling stories too, his feed now dedicated to spotlighting everyday people who stood up in moments that mattered. One of his most watched clips was still the moment Caleb said, "You were mean to us, but Mom's in charge." The quote had been printed on a t-shirt, worn by guests, worn by staff. It had become a quiet motto for the movement. Then, just as the dust seemed to finally settle, an anonymous whistleblower submitted documents showing that David Holt and several other regional managers had ignored internal complaints about racial bias for years. Emails, reports, and flagged training surveys buried in digital drawers. Maya read through every page with steady eyes. "No more silence," she said. "No more hiding." The board unanimously approved a second audit, this time external. As for Caleb, one evening as they left a long meeting, he looked up and asked, "Do you think it's really better now?" Maya wrapped an arm around him and said, "It's not perfect, but it's moving, and we're steering." That night, she posted a short message online, simple but powerful. Change doesn't start at the top. It starts when someone refuses to be pushed to the bottom. 6 months later, mother and son launched a nonprofit initiative, Open Doors, dedicated to fighting bias in hospitality nationwide, at its first youth event. Caleb stood on stage in a navy blazer just like the one he'd worn in that boardroom and told the crowd, "My mom's my hero, and now we help other people feel like they belong, no matter what they wear, or how they look, or what someone assumes." In the audience, Maya stood with pride, not as a CEO, not as a shareholder, but simply as a mother who knew that change, real change, had taken root.